Hey guys, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andre Seegers, and today we're joined by Derek Bittner to discuss a potentially leaked fourth character for Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Cranky Kong. So let's get started. Alright Derek, so there was a little surprise while I was on vacation, which seems to be the case. Whenever I take off is when, a bunch of things come out, which is great. So, apparently, the box art for Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, at least the European box art, leaked onto the internet, and it shows off kind of a big feature, apparently.
Yeah, it was, I believe the actual source was Amazon Italy.
Right.
Was the one that put up a listing, and they had this box art, and looking at the box art, it looks pretty professional.
Yeah, the box art is definitely official, having, the official artwork for Donkey Kong, Diddy, and Dixie on there, being the, three main playable characters we've seen so far. But then, if you look behind them, there's a fourth character hanging on to Donkey Kong, and it's Cranky Kong, and, it's basically, I can't see how this doesn't do anything but confirm him as being the fourth playable character, because taking an action role, riding on Donkey Kong, while they're all riding on a vine.
Yeah.
And that's something we've never seen before in the series. So before we dive too deep into this, what's your impression of this? We knew about fourth character before, we just never knew, and we even talked about who we thought it could be. But Cranky Kong, I don't think ever came up once for us.
No, we threw out just about every other character in there, characters from Donkey Kong 64, Funky Kong, obviously, just all these others. Never once did it ever come up as Cranky Kong, because he's always just the guy either making fun of you or selling you items or, being generally cranky.
Right. True to his name.
So you don't normally expect him to be in a role like this. That we couldn't really imagine his moveset. I still can't really imagine his moveset. I mean, what about you? Did you expect him at all?
I did not see this coming. With that said, I kind of like it. It's off the wall, and it kind of makes sense, especially with him bragging at the end of the first Donkey Kong Country, how he could beat the game in less than an hour with 101%, and then we can finally get to see Cranky Kong in action, putting his skills, where his mouth is, basically.
Yeah, let's see if he can back up all these brags over the years. And looking at this box art, I'm not sure if he can, because seems like he's hanging on to Donkey pretty tight there.
So that's actually a good point. It actually raises another thing about this character. Is at least my initial theory was that the fourth character would be a DK type character, a stronger character, instead of the supporting Diddy or Dixie who ride around the Donkey Kong. Going off the screenshot though, or going off this box art though, it looks like Cranky Kong will also be a supporting character. Where he'll, at least if you're playing single player, where he'll ride around the Donkey Kong. And that raises a few questions. For one, I guess it kind of makes him almost seem a little bit too passive for what Cranky Kong should be. But if you're playing co-op, you can play, presumably you can play with them. Well, I guess before we actually explore that, do you agree with that assessment, or do you think he might actually be a completely independent character like Donkey Kong that you can choose, and Diddy or Dixie would ride around on Cranky Kong?
Yeah, I honestly think you're right on the money, the first one, where he's riding along on Donkey. That just the way he's clinging there, I think you're right. He's definitely going to be more of a support character. So in that case, Diddy and Dixie have different moves they can use when riding on Donkey Kong. Of course, one is their aerial, or their double jump, basically. Diddy has a jetpack, Dixie has her hairspin. What's Cranky going to have? What can this guy do? That's the thing. Is we have no idea. We've never seen him in any type of action other than that rocking chair.
Right.
I mean, I'm trying to imagine, what are old people capable of?
So old people have canes. Cranky Kong has a cane. I'm thinking, what if he twirled his cane, in the air, as a helicopter?
That's possible.
Right?
But it's definitely possible, but it's he still needs something a little bit more unique from, essentially, Dixie.
That's Dixie, yeah.
Yeah, because with Dick... Too many names. With Diddy...
Too many Kongs. You've gone too Kong. You never go full Kong.
Oh, God. Oh, God. With Diddy Kong, his is just sort of a gradual slope downward. There's not really any upwards momentum.
Right.
What we've seen of Dixie, she has that little boost upwards when you first use it, and then she glides downwards like Diddy. So you can't really have So what would you have Cranky do unless he has a lot more horizontal movement?
Yeah, I was just thinking something along those lines. Like maybe, maybe like a slower descent, because like Dixie doesn't really give you that much airtime. You know, it gives you like a little bump, as you mentioned. So maybe Cranky Kong, could give you like more horizontal movement, or give you like just a slower. I guess that would be part of it potentially. Yeah, slower descent basically. With no vertical movement. I could see something along those lines. I have no other ideas for how they could do an aerial attack for him, though. Like, besides giving him his own jetpack or something, which would be kind of a cop-out, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, like, what if he uses sort of like cane fu, where he can, like, toss his cane in front of him and do all kinds of crazy stuff with that?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, he does, like, he's always sold, like, potions in the previous games, and, off the wall. Maybe, what if, like, he could use balloons? But he does sell life balloons. In Donkey Kong Country Returns, so
that's true.
It could function kind of like the villagers recovery move in Smash Brothers, or like maybe you can grow a balloon, like kind of flap around or something.
Maybe. I was just thinking maybe he. I know this is because of limited animation, but like at the credits of the original Donkey Kong Country, where he's like scooting by on his rocking chair. Maybe that's how he moves, is scooting along on the rocking chair.
That's funny you bring that up, because Tom, who I was talking to before this discussion, who does a lot of our artwork and appeared in our discussions before, he was saying that it's too bad Cranky Kong doesn't have a wheelchair. They just wheel himself around in, which would be pretty hilarious. And it does tie into what you just mentioned, where the lack of wheels never stopped his mobility in the first game, during the credits.
Not really.
So I think that those are all the ideas we have, I think, for how he could fly.
Yeah, I got nothing as far as that. I mean, I'm trying to even think back, like, because the whole idea of it is that he's the original Donkey Kong from the old arcade games.
Right.
And even then, that Donkey Kong, what did he do? Throw barrels.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a brilliant point for what I was going to bring up next, actually. So good job, Derek. Because because Diddy and Dixie, they also have the ability, whether they're riding Donkey Kong or when they're by themselves, to shoot a gun. Diddy had his peanut gun, and Dixie has her bubble gum gun. It's so clever there, guys.
I like bubble gun better.
So I was wondering what could Cranky's move be? His projectile, basically. Not that it's that important. Like, I never found those moves to be that important to the game. But yeah, I'm guessing he's going to have something along those lines. And having barrels would kind of make sense. It would tie into his heritage. Even though it's something they've kind of shied away from in more recent games. But really, barrels are the best thing I have at this point. I can't really think of anything else that he could, that would make sense from what we've seen of him so far.
I'm trying to remember back to that old game. It's because it's been years since I played the original Donkey Kong. Like, did he throw anything else other than barrels?
No, I don't think I can't think of anything in the original Donkey Kong game. But now that I think about it, in Donkey Kong Country 3, Donkey Kong Country 3, he actually did throw something. Because he was in that bonus game with Swanky Kong. And you had to fight Cranky Kong in a target game where you each threw baseballs at targets. So I could see him having something along those lines here. I mean, that would be one hell of a throwback, really, if they did that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. I've got nothing else besides barrels or baseballs.
I think that's what makes Cranky Kong so exciting, is because he is such an unknown. Like, even though we may, of course, this isn't 100% confirmed, but if it is, we have no idea how he's going to play, and that's kind of exciting.
It is. It lends a novel concept to the game.
Now I do have a question for you, as far as Cranky is concerned. Do you think he's essentially going to be like a super guide? Because his whole shtick throughout all the games is how good he is at the games. So could he sort of be like a super character that could just power through these levels because he's so good?
That's a good idea. It's possible. I'm leaning toward no, just because Nintendo's always presented him as being a fourth playable character. And, it didn't sound like, there's going to be any distinction with him. Like, it sounds like he's just going to be, like, available from the start. I mean, I guess, as opposed to, like, being something that appears when you die multiple times. But, although, now that you mention it, he could be similar to, like, Nabbit in New Super Luigi U, where, he's just a playable character and he's just way better than everyone else. That would make sense. I almost feel like that'd be a kind of a cop-out for Cranky, though. I mean, it kind of works, but kind of doesn't, because it depends how you look at it. Because, he would be playing... Maybe he's so good that, the rules just don't apply to him. but it also could just look like, oh, he's good because the game cheats for him, basically, or something.
Yeah, I can see both points.
Not that that's even particularly an important point when when talking about this, but it's
well, it's sort of like how the original, you die so many times, you have all these helper things come around, so you die so many times the Cranky Kong barrel shows up,
right,
and Cranky just berates you the entire time.
Yeah, but in that case, if that were the case, which would be interesting, I mean, he'd have to be his own character. He wouldn't be able to ride on Donkey Kong really, because that it wouldn't make sense. I mean, how would Donkey Kong?
No, you're right.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of any other unique features he could have. I mean, I feel like he has to use his cane in some way. So maybe maybe it could be tied into the rest of the animations. Like maybe, when you pound the ground, maybe he just slams his cane around, which could stun enemies nearby. And yeah, I'm just trying to think of any other uses for Cranky that he might have that we haven't thought of yet.
Got me.
Like,
I'm not sure.
Maybe he could throw his cane like a boomerang and it'll come back to him.
I suggested that earlier. I mean, that's possible, but who knows?
Yeah.
That's just the thing. Is like I said, what makes him so exciting is because it's hard to even imagine what he plays like. Yeah, and I think that's why I'm so intrigued by him.
Like, what would his when you're playing with him in co-op? Like, what would his role even be? I mean, not as in his his cartwheel attack. Like, does he use his cane as as a weapon that he whirls around?
Cranky Kong's never been portrayed as spry.
No, he hasn't. we haven't really seen. I mean, yeah, he hasn't. But he just rocks in his rocking chair.
You always just had the feeling it was just the ramblings of an old man, or he was breaking the fourth wall and saying about how he could play the game better, not actually do the things better.
Now, speaking of which, man, you're rocking there with these segues for me, man. So Cranky Kong is well known for breaking the fourth wall. In basically in most of his appearances, especially dating way back to the original Donkey Kong countries. Do you think that'll be something they'll incorporate into the gameplay in some way, or into the story with Cranky in some way? Do you think they'll continue to run with that, or do you have any ideas of how they could run with that?
Only if he actually acts as a super guide character.
Right.
I think if he played normally, they probably will drop that. Maybe they'll still have him berating people, but not breaking the fourth wall.
Right.
I think that he makes a sensible way of shaming the player from having to use him.
Yeah, that actually could work really well now that you mention it. That actually could be really. It's like, oh, you need my help now?
Yeah, it's like, you youngins don't know how to do anything today. In my day, I could do this, this, and this so quickly. Here, let me show you, or that sort of thing.
Right. It's not a bad idea. I mean, that actually does make a lot of sense. Yeah, now you mention it, that almost makes more sense than having him be just a normal character with the other four. But I think that would kind of take away from him too. It
would. I kind of want to be able to use him normally.
Yeah,
because if he's a super guy, I'm never going to use him. Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I didn't use Nabbit. I'd never used Luigi in New Super Luigi or the New Super Mario Brothers games. Yeah, it would be kind of a waste, to put this much effort into a character that most people aren't going to use. Or at least the people that would appreciate him most for what he is. So now there is something interesting though about having being a playable character, and that is who replaces him in the item shop, presuming the item shop's back. He's always had some kind of some kind of supplemental role in the previous games, whether it's giving advice in Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2, or being part of a minigame in 3, or being an item shop in Donkey Kong Country 64 and Donkey Kong Country Returns. Which is the most relevant example, of course. So I mean, I'm guessing the item shop. I'm sure it has to be back. So what is he going to do, or who's going to replace him? Unless you actually go to the item shop to get his help as the as the assist character.
That is a possibility. Maybe you have to purchase Cranky Kong in some way or something like that. But if we're going off the idea that he's just a regular fourth playable character, I think Funky probably makes the most sense.
Right.
As far as, because Funky's probably the one that's shown up the most out of all the supplementary Kongs, other than these four. And
that's who a lot of people thought the fourth character might actually would be Funky Kong.
Because he's one of the few Kongs that, other than Diddy and Donkey, that have been playable in a Mario Kart game.
That's true.
So that's pretty high up there. Not even Dixie's been able to do that. So
yeah,
I think that's why everybody thought that he would be the fourth character. But I can see him taking the shop role and just sort of mixing in his whole, his whole gimmick there.
Yeah, it's very unusual. Yeah, it just depends entirely on what they plan to do with this character. Because it would make perfect sense for him to, if he's a super guide character, to still manage the item shop. If not, though, I think Funky Kong could take over. Maybe they'll have a new character, perhaps. Maybe they'll bring Wrinkly Kong back from the dead again and have her run it.
Or have Candy Kong back, or
yeah, Candy Kong's the one I probably don't care about at all.
Yeah. Nobody does.
So another question for you. So now that we have Cranky Kong, we already talked about how we like that he's here. I will say though, I do have like a slight mixed feeling on this, because at least one of my ideas for the fourth character would have been, Kiddy Kong, of course, from Donkey Kong Country 3. And even though I never really liked him that much, like he's whatever as a character, I'm just slightly disappointed he's not the fourth character, just because it would have been cool to have all the original Donkey Kong Country playable characters back in one game. You're
not wrong there, but I don't think there's much they could have done with Kiddy Kong, because he was always just a Donkey Kong clone to me.
Yeah, I mean that's what he was. Yeah.
I don't play a lot of Donkey Kong Country 3, but I don't remember him having any unique skills that Donkey Kong didn't have.
Yeah, the only thing was that you could throw him to have him land, through a crack in the floor or something.
Yeah, it never made sense to me why they didn't have just Donkey and Dixie teamed up.
Because Donkey Kong got kidnapped, dude, duh.
That's stupid. 3 games where Donkey Kong is the main character is called Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, I know.
Only one of them is where he's playable.
That's a good point. When you put it that way, you're right. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, never made sense to me.
So, now speaking of available characters, my final question for you is: Do you think this means anything for Smash Brothers? Do you think it's possible Cranky Kong could sneak in as another character, from the Donkey Kong universe in Smash Brothers?
No. If any Donkey Kong character is returning to Smash, it's going to be Diddy, and I think that'll cover it. Just because they even, with them trimming up the how many characters, it makes no sense to add Cranky, because he's sort of an unproven entity as of right now.
That's true.
And I think they'll just stick with Diddy.
I could see him being like a support character, like him coming in. And I don't know, like messing...
he'd make a great assist trophy.
Yeah, there's so much potential they could do with that. They could have him act like Mr. Resetti with speech bubbles appearing over the screen berating you, or having him mess with the game's code or something, to make it the graphics freak out for a second. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things they could do, or just having him appear as a character that in the environment itself that I don't know. Hits you with his cane or something. Would you have any final thoughts at all on Cranky Kong being the, seemingly confirmed as a fourth character in Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze? Anything we haven't mentioned yet, or any other ideas you have for him?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. It just, lots of potential, no idea where they're going with it. Excited to see, because I love the original Donkey Kong Country Returns.
So knowing nothing about him but the potential ideas we thought of, do you think you'll play as him a bunch? Do you think he's going to be your main go-to partner character now, or...?
Probably not, but and especially not if he's a super guide.
Right.
I'll do what I did with 3D World and just switch up the characters as much as I can. If he's a regular character, but if he's a super guide, I probably won't use him until I beat the game.
Yeah, I mean, well, and at that point, for me at least, I'll be like, well, I beat the game, I'm done with it. I've got no incentive to replay these levels now. So I'll probably never play as Cranky Kong in that case. Mm-hmm. I'm just looking forward to seeing, how he plays, and, I would not be surprised if some of our ideas factor in some way. I feel like they have to. Not all of them, but some of them. So
we might get one or two. We might get one or two in there.
His cane's going to be evolved in some way. I know it. I just don't know how. Although he does not seem to be holding it in this artwork. So
yeah.
Whereas Diddy does have his his jetpack backpack. So who knows? Maybe he doesn't use his cane. But we'll find out in not too long, because the game comes out in just a little over or about 2 months now. So All right, well, thanks for joining us, Derek, and thanks to all of you for watching our discussion. If you liked it, make sure to follow us and like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You can find links to them in the description below. We post all kinds of things there. It's a good way to keep up with everything we post. And of course, keep an eye on GameXplain.com for an even better way of keeping up with everything we post. And for everything Donkey Kong and other things gaming too. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.